In accordance with General Statute 138A-15, it is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflicts of interest and the appearances of conflict. Does any board member have a known conflict of interest or appearance of conflict with any respect to any matters coming before the board today? If so, please identify the conflict or appearance of conflict and refrain from any undue participation in the particular matter involved. Anyone? All right, thank you. May we have approval of the agenda?
So moved. Second.
We have approval of the agenda, and we have it considering any items taken in order is determined by the chairman. We do? All right, thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make note before you vote on the minutes. Staff has corrected on your copy. The first page shows March 25th and the subsequent pages show March 26th. It was the 26th and that has been corrected.
We have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion to second to approve the minutes for the period of March. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Do we have an open forum member speaking?
We do not have anybody that has requested to speak of the open forum.
Okay, let's move into finance.
Okay.
We're going to move.
Oh, we're going to go.
We can go to the hearing
All
now.
right.
Yes. Okay. Give just a second for the respondent to come up.
All right, do we need to do that while
I would just when you were speaking.
we're hit the button every time we see it?
I think it just,
Well, it'll stay on,
it'll stay on, we just
so
press
when
it.
it's your time.
I'm just gonna hand these new books out right now.
The hearing in matter of Justin B. Sonner before the North Carolina Appraisal Board is now in session. Let the record show that this is the 4th day of June of 2019 and it is approximately 9:03 a.m. and we are in the conference room of the Appraisal Board in Raleigh, North Carolina. The hearing is being held to determine whether the petitioner's application for registration as a trainee real estate appraiser should be denied or approved by the board. My name is Charles L. McGill, Chairman of the Appraisal Board, and I am presiding over this hearing. The other members of the board who have been designated to hold a hearing are David Reitzel, Vice Chairman, Tim Talent, Sarah Burnham, Clay Taylor, Samuel Gore, Dwight Vinson, Vivery Scotton, and Mike Warren. It is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflicts of interest and appearances of conflict. Does any board member know of any personal bias or other factor that would render him unable or her unable to participate in this hearing or to perform all duties in an impartial manner? Okay, I note there's no lack of response, so let the record show that no board member has answered in the affirmative. Are there any motions or other preliminary matters that need to be addressed before we proceed?
I don't have any, Mr. Chairman.
And no, Mr. Chairman.
All right, you're Mr. Stallings, is that correct?
Yeah, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, members of the board, my name is Adam Stallings. I'm the attorney for the applicant today, Justin Sonner.
Okay, do you have a brief opening statement that you wish to make?
Yes, sir. And would you prefer that I stand or sit for you all?
As long as I can hear you, it doesn't matter.
All right. Well, certainly want to give you all the respect that you deserve, and we are pleased and are grateful for the opportunity to be here today. I have gotten to know Mr. Sonner over the course of a short period of time, and I think it's going to be clear once you all have an opportunity to ask him a few questions and hear his story, that he's a person like many of us who have gone through situations and things that we probably wouldn't want to have to share, but sometimes we have to have the courage to be honest, to face what has happened, and then to tell people how we have changed and why we have the character today that's unlike how we used to be. And so I'm hopeful that today you all get to know him and learn to like him and to understand who he is today, and that ultimately you can agree that he does have the character and he is worthy of joining your profession and becoming a trainee to hopefully one day be like you all and be a full appraiser. So thank you for your time today.
Mr. Panico, do you have a brief opening statement?
Just briefly, members of the board, this is a case about an applicant for registration as a trainee, and he has a prior criminal record, 8 misdemeanors and 2 felony convictions, and he will testify about that today, but that's what you're here about today, to determine whether he should be registered as a trainee based on his prior convictions. And if you look in your notebook at State Exhibit 1, which is the notice of hearing, that goes through briefly the convictions that he's here about today.
All right, I think what we do now is, Mr. Stallings, if you're ready to proceed with your presentation of your case.
Yes.
Witnesses.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call Justin Sonner to the stand.
Thank you.
Where's the state?
If you would, and he'll be sworn in.
Mr. Sonner, please place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I did.
All right.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if you're ready.
Proceed.
Mr. Sonner, would you please state your name for the board?
Justin Wood Sonner,
All right, what's your date of birth?
April 22nd, 1975,
1975. And where were you born back in 1975?
Raleigh, North Carolina, Rex Hospital,
All right. Where did you go to high school?
Broughton High School, downtown Raleigh.
So you grew up here, your formative years in Raleigh.
I did.
When did you graduate from Broughton?
1994.
94. You have any brothers or sisters?
I have a sister and a half brother.
What are their names?
Jill Sonner, Dr. Jill Sonner, and William Sonner.
Where do they live?
Jill's in Raleigh, and William is in New Orleans.
And what do your siblings do for a living?
Jill's a dentist over in the North Hills area, and William is an architect in New Orleans.
All right. Have you worked for your brother William in his architecture firm in the past?
I did. I worked for him all the time that I was down in Louisiana from 1999 to 2006.
99 to 2006. What kind of work did you do for William at his firm?
A lot of stuff. Bookkeeping, anything you needed. From bookkeeping to measuring houses to paperwork, all kinds of things, working with his CPA.
Gotcha. And we're here today because of some behavior and things that you disclosed on your application, which all occurred primarily back in the 1990s. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And so you actually wrote a letter to the board with your application. Is that also correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
And is that reflected? Does he have a?
Yeah.
Would you open that up to State's Exhibit 5? And Mr. Chairman, while he's looking for that, would you like to go ahead and stipulate, I believe Ms. Panico and I can stipulate to State's Exhibits 1 through 5 being admitted for the record, if it pleases the board.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. So looking at State's Exhibit 5, is this a letter that you sent to the appraisal board members?
Yes, sir.
And did this kind of go along and try to give some kind of narrative for all of the things that we're about to talk about in a little more detail?
Yes, sir, exactly.
Well, let's start from the beginning. Back in 1991, you had a conviction for contributing to the delinquency of a juvenile. Would you tell the board kind of what happened and why, you know, the events and facts surrounding that?
I was 1991, I guess I was freshman, sophomore in high school. We were trying to figure out, I had a lot of issues going on at the time, and my mother had put me in a place, like a treatment facility, to try to figure out what was going on. I met a girl, and then she ended up breaking out and coming in. I was only 16 in 1991, but I was a minor. So it was contributing, I was a minor contributing to delinquency of a minor, but she ended up breaking out of that place after I had gotten out and came to my house.
All right. Did you tell your parents about it?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't tell my parents about it.
Right.
I
And
didn't.
did she ultimately get found?
Yes, like a day later.
Gotcha.
It wasn't very long.
All right.
She
And-
stayed there, I think, one day.
And it looks like a little while later, same year, you purchased, possessed alcohol underage. What happened that time?
I believe that was either Walnut Creek Open. We went to concerts and we got underage drinking tickets in the parking lot at Walnut Creek, going to some concert. I don't even know what the concert was.
Yeah, you were 16 still at the time.
I was 16. Yeah.
And how tall are you?
6'4".
Kind of stand out in the crowd, do you?
They gave us all. It wasn't just me that got a ticket. All of us did.
Gotcha. All right, the next one, and if you flip the page, you can kind of follow through with your narrative.
Okay.
States 5. It's August 1491. It's another purchase, possess alcohol underage. This is the same type of incident?
Different concert, exact same thing.
All right. 1992. There's a littering and DWI conviction. Would you tell the board about that?
I was driving North Raleigh on Creedmoor Road, way out. Well, back then there was nothing out there. Now it's congested, but out towards Falls Lake, and got pulled over. My passenger threw a beer can out the window as we got pulled over, and there's the littering, and got in trouble for drinking and driving.
Right. We got a 93 larceny. Can you kind of describe the events that led up to that conviction?
This is where me and my friends were actually headed back out Creedmoor in the same direction, and something fell through with our way of getting beer that night. So on the way to the party, we decided somebody came up with the idea to run into a convenience store, and we all grabbed a 12-pack of beer and ran out. There was 4 of us. They had cameras. We obviously didn't think this through, and just kind of sporadically did this. We were teenagers. We were in high school, and we ran in. We were on camera. The license plate was on camera. We were on camera. So obviously, the next day after the party, the police showed up at all our houses.
Right, so they showed up at your house. It wasn't like a police chase or anything like
Oh,
that.
no. They had us from the video, but no, there was no chase.
Right. Did they get you and your friends?
Yes, sir.
And you called this a Yahoo, so I mean, this wasn't something that you all created for the first time.
No, it's something, I don't know who made it up.
All right.
Horrible idea.
So we got a 94. So what are you, 19 at this time, almost? You're 19, I guess? You know,
Yes, sir.
another possession of malt beverage, wine, and consuming alcohol by a minor. That was the conviction. I guess the incident happened while you were still a minor. Was this the third concert?
No, this is at a fraternity. This is my first. I just started college this year, and we were at a fraternity party. And when the cops pulled into the fraternity, which my girlfriend was also underage, this is our first semester of college, I knocked the beer out of her hand and ran around the corner of the fraternity. And the police officer didn't like that.
I gotcha.
That's what happened.
You're looking at the September 30, 1994.
Okay.
But just before that was 8/27/94.
Oh, yes, that was, I guess that was probably a concert.
All right. And then it looks like we got one more of these misdemeanor charges, 1997, September 6th. Can you describe that incident?
That's where I hit a mailbox in a parking lot. I was in college at the time. Hit a mailbox, pulled into my parking spot, and didn't do anything about it. When we got up in the morning, the police knocked on the door. It was obvious we'd hit the mailbox, and it was in my parking lot, and the car was right there with, where I ran off the road, the mud went straight to the car. It was,
What'd you tell the police officer when he asked if you hit the mailbox? Do you recall?
I mean, he said, he already knew. He said, it was right there. He said, come out here and look at this. He didn't ask first. He said, come out here and look at this. And so it was obvious, yes, I'm going to hit the mailbox.
Did you pay to have that mailbox fixed?
Yes, sir.
So around this time, we now have a 97 conviction, but the events happened a couple years earlier, like all these other things. It takes a little time to work through the court. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Kind of explain, before we get into this possession of the marijuana, can you kind of tell us, where were you living at the time and like what you were doing?
And for the 1997?
Yeah, that's when the incident happened.
Yes.
Correct.
Let's see, I just come back. I'd gone out to Colorado to live and go snowboard. I lived in Vail and worked in the mountain. And I come back to go back to college. I went to Carolina. I lived in Chapel Hill at the time, and I was having problems with paying for school at the time. And I came up with the idea of shipping out marijuana from, like I said, I'd been in Colorado before. I knew somebody out there, so we shipped it in the mail to North Carolina, and didn't really think that through. And so that's what we did.
What was your plan to do when you got the marijuana?
Well, I was in college, everybody, just to sell it and pay for college, that was it.
Right. You were, I guess, about 22 at the time? Or was it 20 when you were actually?
Yeah, 20, just turned 22, yes, sir.
All right. And that was when the conviction occurred. And so when the incident happened, it was a couple of years earlier, or is this the date of the incident?
I think that's the date of the incident.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure that's clear. 97 was the date of the incident. Where were you going to college? Where had you been going to college prior to that time?
I was at Carolina at that time, UNC Chapel Hill.
And why did you leave Chapel Hill?
After all this happened, I left North Carolina. I went to Louisiana to LSU. Just it wasn't working out for me here in North Carolina at the time with everything, friends here and everything here.
What was the punishment for that conviction of the possession charge?
I got community service, a few $100 of community service, and some fines and probation, 3 years probation, I think.
All right. Did you do the community service around here?
Yes, sir. I did at Umstead Park, at the libraries. I did Cameron Village Library, picking up trash at Umstead Park, picking up trash on the road, the NC State Fairgrounds, doing all kinds of stuff at the fairgrounds.
Do you believe it was the punishment back in 97 that you received and the things that you had to do to make up for that crime that helped change you and make you who you are today?
I think that might have been part of it. I think that was part of it. I think maybe I was a little bit late to mature. I was very immature for a 21, 22-year-old. And I decided to go to college to actually finish at that point in time. And that's when I moved to Louisiana. I went to LSU, got in 1999. I think I started in the fall, so it was really the beginning of 2000 that semester. And I didn't know anybody there except for my brother. I moved there actually without a place to stay or anything, just got into college. I was actually looking up north, and my brother happened to be there and said, "You don't want to go up here, you just go to LSU and finish. It'll be cheaper for those looking at private schools." And so that's what I did. I didn't really look back. That was 1999.
What degree did you graduate with from LSU?
I graduated in computer science from LSU in 2004.
And during the whole time you were at LSU, were you helping your brother with his job?
That's correct.
All right. How'd you use your education right after graduating at LSU?
I've been helping small businesses in New Orleans with their computers and getting viruses off their computer and setting up networks and printers and basically anything computer. And I was helping people in Baton Rouge, and so I went and started my own company down in New Orleans doing just that. It was doing pretty well right out of college. And then Hurricane Katrina happened, and all those families that owned those small businesses, everybody that was helping, basically, if they had kids, they stayed out of town. They stayed in either Houston, Baton Rouge, wherever they had family, where they ended up. So New Orleans changed after Katrina. So I worked for an engineering firm underneath FEMA for a little while after that. And then New Orleans had changed, like, for a while, stoplights, it was like a war zone. So it was just, all you could do was work 12-hour days. There was nothing to do. Stoplights didn't work. There was no speeding tickets. There was no, it was kind of like, wow, it was like a war zone. But it kind of wore on you after a while, and that was when I moved back to North Carolina.
What caused part of the end of the FEMA employment while you were down there?
My record.
And when you say that, what do you mean? What happened?
They hired everybody very fast without going through proper channels that they would have worked for these companies. So they pulled everybody with a criminal record, and they were fired.
And so basically, based on your criminal record at that time, you lost that job and moved back to North Carolina, is that correct?
Yes.
Well, when you got back to North Carolina, where did you live?
5806 Condor, over there near where I grew up, by Crabtree Valley Mall.
All right. And what did you start doing professionally at that time?
I'd always kind of wanted to do real estate. I'd realized that the computer degree was somewhat negated by the record. I'd also gotten a job right before Katrina. I was working a job at a big defense contractor, and that was a problem there. I had a few other interviews and stuff, and that was a problem there. So I came back and I decided that I wanted to do real estate. And so I took a class for a few classes, and then took a test, and then had to go through this hearing with the Real Estate Commission.
Right, so you sat down with the Real Estate Commission at that time and went through the record, kind of like you're doing now, as far as talking about your past.
Yes, sir. It was a little bit different, but same thing. Yes.
Right, and did they ultimately give you the license?
Yes, sir, they did.
All right. Had you gotten in any trouble since that 97 incident to the time you got licensed by the Real Estate Commission back in, I guess, early 2006 or so?
No, sir.
All right. Were you using drugs during that period?
No, sir. During which period?
After that conviction with the possession, up until the North Carolina.
No, sir.
How about now? Do you use drugs
No,
today?
sir.
All right. And how often were you drinking at the time?
In college?
No, that same period, from about let's say after college till the time that you were till now.
But I'd say it's normal. I was more of a weekend guy. You know, depends on during Mardi Gras, on the weekends. Not a lot. I mean.
How about today?
Really not a lot. orchard, 4-acre orchard that I take care of. I've got into cattle. I've got some cattle that I maintain, move around, stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. Before we get there, though, let's talk about right after you got your license in real estate, just a few months later, you got into this last incident that you discussed. It's a possession of a firearm by a felon.
Yes, sir.
All right. Where did the events occur related to this conviction? Was it where you were living?
No, it's not where I live. It's a house that was in my name.
And how did you come to own that particular house?
It was my father's house. My father had that house and a mountain house, and my father had a stroke, a bad stroke. And so my brother took the mountain house into his name, and I took that house into my name. And at the time, I was in college at that time down at LSU, and so I had an old friend. This was way prior. This was early, around 2002, I think. I had one of my buddies from high school that I grew up with, and so we moved that house into our name. I needed help with the financing to get approved for the financing. Well, that was 2006. We put it into our name.
Right, so you and a friend owned the house,
Yes, sir.
but you didn't live there. Did he live there?
My mother had lived there since 2002 or 3, all the way through, and he had not lived there very long. I want to say 6 months when all that happened.
Okay, and so when you say all that happened, what happened to cause him to get in trouble that ultimately led to you getting in trouble?
He was selling marijuana.
Out of that house?
I'm not sure if it was out of that house, but yeah, he was.
How did you find out about the police getting involved and going to the home?
I had just moved my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, back from Louisiana. I've been down in Louisiana. I moved her back. We went to a mellow mushroom restaurant, and one of the employees knew both me and the other fellow, Charles. And he told me, asked me if I'd heard what had happened at my house.
What did you do in response to that?
Nothing's happened at my house. He said, no, not that house, the house where Charles and this other guy Foods lived. I said, no, I hadn't heard what happened. And he said, well, they want to talk to you. They're looking for you. And so that was the first I heard of it.
And did you call the police?
Well, I called Charles's girlfriend or fiance at the time, and then yes, I did get the police to come around and call them.
All right. And then ultimately, did you plead guilty to this charge?
Yes, sir.
Well, why did you plead guilty to this charge? And it was a possession of a firearm. I mean, before you get why did you plead? What firearms did you possess? Let's say back in 97, 99, when the conviction occurred.
Before the conviction, I probably had 30 or 50 guns. It was a lot. I had hunting guns, all kinds of guns, handguns, had a gun safe, and then
In 99, you had to get rid of them because that was
Yeah,
part of
that's
the
correct.
conviction.
So I'd sold them along the way from in between the day before the conviction. Then at the very end, when I was going to court and I knew that I was going to become a felon that day, there were 3 guns left, 2 of which didn't work, one of which was an old antique gun. And they were the 3 that hadn't got sold. And my mother lived on Wade Avenue on the way from Chapel Hill to court. And I should have taken them to a pawn shop or taken them to a gun shop, or I didn't really want to throw them away because I knew something kind of like this or even worse would have happened, where somebody would have found them. And I just took them by her house and said, here, take them to the pawn shop, keep the money, whatever. There were 3 guns, and that was in 1999. That was the last time that was before I went to LSU, before all that stuff, and that was really the last time I thought about those guns. And it appears what happened was they got packed away in some of her stuff, and like I said, she lived there before. And when my friend moved in, she moved from a 2,500 square foot house to a, I don't know, 1,500 maybe or 1,000, a small but she moved from a 4-bedroom house to a 2-bedroom house, much smaller. And there were 2 rooms in the old house that were packed, like floor-to-ceiling bed mattresses sideways. You couldn't walk in them, like you would have had to pull stuff out. And so they found the guns somewhere in those rooms, which were storage, basically storage units at the time that were supposed to have been moved out there but had not been. It was just a bad chain of events for me. That was what I actually, my mistake was just going and partnering up with a friend, I guess, that was involved with something. But
Yeah, and not getting rid of those guns back in '99 or before.
correct.
All right. Now, why did you plead guilty to that charge of possession of a firearm in 2007?
Because I was facing a lot of time, regardless of whether or not I did it. I didn't think I did it, but the law was vague. The law stated willingly and knowingly, and it was hard for me to prove what I knew. And it was a lot of time, and I was advised by a lawyer, friend of the family, not my lawyer for that case, but another one, based on everything that I was crazy to plead not guilty and with so much time at risk, whether or not I did it, because the trial was basically a coin flip. The way he saw it, he looked into it for me. He was good friends with the family, and he said, and they're offering you no time, so just to take the charge. You're already a felon anyway, so why not just take it rather than risk? Because he said, you won't be on trial at that trial, it'll just be you watching your life. And I was just advised by a lawyer.
Right. So you ultimately pled guilty. How has been a felon? You mentioned earlier that you ended up losing a couple jobs when background checks are done. In other ways have you been, and your career been shaped by having a felony on your record?
Oh, it's totally been shaped. It's 100% in shape. Like I said, I've got a computer science degree, which was a tough degree to get, and I'm pretty much eliminated from that job market. That's useless. I should have gone into something much easier like construction management or anything. I mean, not computer science. It's changed. I've been lucky. 14 years ago or 15 years ago, when the real estate market took it down, I started doing some contract work for a friend of a friend's company, and I did good at that, so they hired me on. So I stayed there for 10 or 12 years. Wow, longer than 10 years. And then I got tired of sitting at a computer all day, every day, and I hooked up with another buddy that has a solar company out of Durham, and so I've been working there the last 2 years. So I have been lucky with things.
And so where do you currently live in the state?
I live in Silcote. It's between Pittsburgh and Chapel Hill. We've got a farm out there.
All right. And so you mentioned earlier you do a couple things for a living. Tell the board members about the orchard. What is this you're talking about?
So it's hazelnut no trees, and we're trying to do the black truffles, black marigold truffles. And so we got 4 acres, and it's a beast as far as work goes. Basically, we've got 6 or 7 foot long rows that have these trees every 6 foot, and we try to maintain it and keep it basically all in red clay, which is a lot of work. So I do that a lot.
Is that a full-time job for you, pretty much?
It is, but it's not my full-time job, but it is a full-time job, yes.
Right. And have you done this in the past, or is this kind of the first time with the Black Truffle Orchard?
First time.
And is this a joint venture, or is this you alone?
It's me and my brother.
So it's William down in, where does he live now?
He's still in New Orleans, yes, sir.
And then what's another thing that
I do cattle. I got into cattle. I tried everything out. When we moved out to the farm, I tried a lot of different things, but I figured out there were certain things I couldn't do that took a lot of time because the orchard was the first priority in that. And so I was interested in cattle, and that's what people do out there in Chatham County by me in Silcote. And so I'm growing my herd right now.
About how many heads of cattle do you have right now?
35 or so, and counting, they're going up, but now's when they start to go up fast. So I started with 13 brood cows, or mama cows.
Were you doing these 2 kind of full-time jobs while you were taking the courses to get your appraisal license and go through this process?
Yes, sir, last summer. missed myself.
All right. Are you currently married?
Yes, sir.
Who's your wife?
Kelly Sarn,
Is she here today?
she's out there.
She's out there. All right. And who'd she bring with her today?
My son Henry Sarn,
And how old is Henry?
15 months.
How long have you and Kelly been together?
Well, according to her, longer than I remember, but about 2000, since 2002, so a long time.
A long time. Why do you want an opportunity to become a licensed appraiser?
I've always been interested in real estate. I've always done appraisals since I was young with my dad. I grew up in North Raleigh, and he was a professor at NC State, but he worked for Lewis Dickerson, Tom Coffey, and Arthur Sandman growing up. And so I saw North Raleigh be developed. I mean, I used to skateboard down Creedmoor Road to the mall. It was a two-lane road back then. That was cool. I've seen everything grow up, and I've just always been interested. It's one of my...
And is this the kind of business that you want to have as your full-time primary occupation going forward?
Yes, sir.
Do you know anyone right now in the business that you'd hope to try to make connections with if you were given the opportunity to practice?
Yes, sir.
And what's your goal going forward if you're given this chance today by the board?
To be a commercial appraiser and work under somebody for the 2 or 3 years, and hopefully like it so much that I didn't have to go out on my own, but eventually got out on your own, do one thing.
Is there anything else you want these board members to understand as to how you've changed since these events and the things that you did back in the 90s that even followed you to a conviction in 2007?
I've never heard anything, but I am a different person than I was back in high school in the 90s, and very different. I was a young punk back then, and I did have some issues going on. I don't know what they were. Still don't know what they were, but things do change. People do grow up, and it may have taken me a little longer to do so than most, but I have paid for it, and I continue to pay for it, and I would have an opportunity to be an appraiser. I'm quite confident I could do a good job.
Thank you, Mr. Sun.
Thank you.
And those are all my questions.
Ms. Panicle, do you have any questions
Yes.
for the witness?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me, court reporter? Can you hear me, board members? Good morning, Mr. Sonner.
Good morning.
A few questions for you.
Okay.
If you can look in your notebook, I just want to go through the exhibits first.
Okay.
First of all, I know we stipulated to the exhibits, but I just want to go through them with you anyway. The notice of hearing, state exhibit number 1, you received that in order to be here today, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And that sets forth the convictions as you testified to them today.
Okay, yes.
You understand, you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Exhibit number 2, this is your attorney's request for the hearing today. You did request the hearing today,
Yes.
is that right? Okay. And exhibit number 3, this is the letter that you received from me in which you requested the hearing today about your application for registration.
Yes.
Okay. And exhibit number 4, this is your application for registration as a trainee.
Yes.
Okay. And so on this application, page 3 of the application is where you stated that you had been convicted of or had pled guilty to any criminal offense in North Carolina. So you admitted it to the board.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And exhibit number 5 is the letter that you've just been going through with the board members.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I want to ask you some questions about the convictions that you talked about today. The first one, and I'm looking at your letter, the contributing to the delinquency of a juvenile. What was the punishment for that offense? Was that a 1-year unsupervised probation?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And then the second one, the purchase of the underage, purchase, possession of alcohol underage. What was the punishment for this misdemeanor, if you recall?
They were all fines, and I don't think there was anything for the underage drinking at the time.
Okay,
It was
just
just fines.
a fine, okay. And then the third one, in August of 1991, the possession, this is possession of alcohol underage, this is another possession of alcohol underage. Was that the 2 years of supervised probation for that one?
I do not recall.
Okay. Did you receive probation for some of these
I did.
misdemeanors?
I
Okay.
did.
And what did that probation involve?
Community service, drug tests, and meeting with a probation officer and not getting in any more trouble.
Okay. And then the littering, the fourth one, August of 1992, littering and DWI. What, your license, your driver license was suspended for that?
Yes,
DWI
ma'am.
is that for 2 years?
Yes, ma'am.
And you received community service and probation for that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then the larceny in 1993, October 1993, that was again probation for that one?
They made us pay for the beer, and it may have been an unsupervised probation.
Okay.
I don't think it was a supervised probation.
And then the 1994 possession of malt beverage, do you recall what the punishment for that was?
It was a fine. They didn't do much. It may have been unsupervised.
And then this, again in 1994, the littering, beer container, and resisting public officer. That was a 3 years unsupervised probation and community service?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then the injury of the real property, the mailbox in 1997, was that again unsupervised probation for that one?
I believe.
Okay. And then the felony in 1999, that was, you said that was 3 years of supervised probation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And this possession of firearm by a felon, the conviction wasn't until 2010 for that?
Correct.
Okay. So the incident happened in 2007?
9 or 10. It was much like you guys.
Okay.
I was pleading not guilty all the way to the end.
Okay.
They had offered me that the plea deal originally, but it took me a few years to agree to it.
Okay. I want to ask you about this possession of a firearm by a felon. So you, after the felony conviction of the possession with intent to distribute marijuana, you were required to get rid of all of the guns registered to you?
Correct.
And you kept 3 of those guns?
I did not keep 3. Now, I thought that I dropped them off at my mom's just for, I guess I should have gotten rid of them before, and it was the last minute. And my mom does not have a lot of money, so I just came up with the idea, instead of going by the pawn shop on the way to the court, I went by my mom's and just said, here, take them to the pawn shop, keep the money, thinking that was getting rid of them.
So you didn't ensure that she got rid of those guns?
No, I did not.
And you could have taken them to law enforcement and gotten rid of them that way as well. Did you pursue that?
I didn't even think about that.
Okay. So you agree that it was your responsibility to get rid of these guns?
Correct. Yes, it was my responsibility.
Okay. Now, a lot of these convictions involve alcohol and drug use.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you had any substance abuse treatment?
No.
No. And you still drink on occasion?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't have any other questions.
All right, thank you. Do you have any, Mr. Stallings, do you have any follow-up?
Mr. Chairman, just a couple. Mr. Sonner, your mother, Irving Boyd, who you dropped those guns off with back in 1999 thereabouts, is here today, correct?
Yes, sir.
And she here to support you.
Yes, sir.
All right. And the last thing, do you carry your real estate pocket card on you today?
I do.
All right. And so how is that license status currently?
It's inactive. It's been inactive for a long time, since 2008, maybe around now. So it's been inactive a Over 10 years.
All right, and you'd have to take education and things to get that reinstated.
Yes, I would.
All right, those are all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, at this time, I will open up for questions to board members. Anyone want a question to witness? Mr. Gore, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. So Mr. Sonner, you are 34,
44.
44. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So a good bit of this happened while you were in high school,
Yes, sir.
under 18 years old.
Yes, sir.
And you did receive a Bachelor of Science degree in Computer Science from LSU.
Yes, sir.
Once things, I'm assuming, sort of got straightened out for you a little bit.
Yes, sir.
And it's a fact that you tell me that everywhere that you would want to use this education, you're not able to because of the application you might have to render and so forth. And the reason I'm asking you this is, I know at least in Wilmington, there are IT guys that, in fact, some even specialize in IT for appraisal, and they're busy as they can be. I don't probably ever ask to see a resume of anybody. Is it just something you just don't want to do anymore, or you just don't see a future in it?
Well, IT, I'm computer science programmer. So, my job would more be like with Google or Amazon.
I see.
I do networking and I do similar to IT, but that's just from self-taught stuff. Computer science is actually the programming side. So
what I described as entry level, and but you have a
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
yes, sir. Have you, in terms of becoming an appraiser, have you spoken with appraisers? Do you have appraiser friends that do commercial work, and do you have an idea of your potential salary?
yes, sir.
Okay, so you know you won't become a gazillionaire for being an appraiser.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You used to could. You can't anymore. There's one question I had, and it's about the 2007 possession of firearm by a felon. Is these events from high school and even from 2007, where you have somehow partnered up with another individual, is the same person? Or various people?
The 2007 was, yeah, it was my best friend from high school. There was no partnering up on any of them except for, and we just bought a house together. I needed his help in the financing at the time.
Yeah.
And so we owned the house together, and then he ended up wanting to move in around the same time my mom wanted to move out because she had a roommate and her roommate had moved away.
Yeah.
And so it just worked out that he had moved into the house, and it was, by her leaving stuff there, it was a total disaster for me. I mean, it was my fault. I did it, I guess. But kind of unknowingly.
Well, you said though that you sold pot, marijuana, from and sent it to
Here.
North Carolina, but your statement here is I wasn't involved with my friend or his marijuana.
Oh, and what he was doing? No, that I was not involved with that. No, that was, I was referring back to 1997.
Okay.
Actually, I had nothing to do with my friend. The reason that I got involved on the 2007 is because of two main things. One, the house was in my name. Well, I guess three main things. One, the house was in my name. The deed was in my name. And two, that had been my mailing address in North Carolina since 2002. Whenever the house was bought, I got a North Carolina license. I had a North Carolina license and a Louisiana license. Actually, we were not 2002. They didn't make yet turn one in. But I had, I want to say North Carolina insurance was cheaper than Louisiana insurance.
Okay. So when's the last time you did sell pot?
1997.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't sell pot afterwards. That was in.
And just a couple that sentence, you realize your real estate license is inactive or whatever, it's starting over at this point.
Yeah.
It's clearly from scratch. Why did you not keep that active?
Would it,
I mean, did you get it before these incidents occurred and now you can't get them back, or what's the status?
no, I just, real estate's commission based. I just never had, the last 14 years I had a decent job that when I was doing real estate, when the market kind of tanked, I kind of went off and started working computers at the time, and my big, Bill Guy, actually had a co-op banker, he let me go because I had another job, and that was frowned upon, which actually, as the market tanked about 2 months later, I think it was encouraged at the very same office to have a job while you were doing real estate, because that's when real estate kind of was bad.
Well, I mean, I tell you, it's $45 a year,
Yeah,
and two classes, so that's $90, so it's $135 a year to keep that active. Just
or no, I still have it, it's just inactive.
well, that's over after 2 years. It's toilet paper.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I help clarify something?
Sure.
Mr. Gore? Is it your understanding, based on counsel from me, first, are you aware that I worked at the Real Estate Commission as a prosecutor there for about 3 years?
I was not.
All right. Is it your understanding that all you have to do is take 2 post-licensing courses because you've paid the $45 each year?
That's correct.
There may be some other continuing education you have to take to reinstate that,
I thought it was like 16 hours,
and then you would need to, if you want to reactivate it, the only thing they don't know about is that 2007 firearm conviction.
yes,
And is it your plan, if you were to ever try to reactivate it by taking the post-licensing in any CE,
yes, sir.
to disclose that as well, just as you've done here today?
Yes, sir.
All right. But it's your understanding under the current law that you just have to take post-licensing, and that's why you paid the $45 each year?
Yes, sir. Well, I paid the $45 each year because my mother had a real estate license, and she wished she would have kept hers up, and so she just always said, I wish I would have kept mine up. This was 10 years ago or whatever, but I just kept it. Why not? It was $45 a year, and I've just paid it. And it was my understanding I only had to take 16 hours if I ever wanted to get back into it. It was, why not have that option? So I just paid $45.
Yeah, all due respect, my understanding is there are 3 30-hour courses you have to take, those 3 30-hour courses. And even though you've been paying $45 a month, I'm just saying, and then of course you have to apply and go through the same process with the real estate board, correct?
Yes, sir. If
Can I, this is sort of, he's gonna have to testify, and
Right.
it seems outside the relevance of the,
Well, if he wants to be a real estate appraiser,
well, I guess the question should be directed to the
okay.
lawyers.
Well, is that your understanding?
I did not know that you had to take 3 30-hour classes for a total of 90 hours. I didn't know that.
Do you have a driver's license?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have a substance abuse problem?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Does any other board member have any questions? You have the floor, sir.
I think one important question is, do you have someone that will take you under their wing and help you already lined up?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that person here today?
No, he's not.
Anyone else?
I have a couple questions, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for being candid with us, Ryan. Got a couple of questions. There was, apparently during this time period, things kind of got intertwined with the events.
Okay.
So at any time during the probation periods that the council was asking about, let me back up. during those probation periods, was a part of the requirement that you go through both drug and alcohol testing?
Yes, sir.
Were there any occasions during that period of time that you were found either to be in possession of or under the influence of drugs or alcohol?
No, sir.
Okay. During this period of time, you may have testified to this, I didn't catch it, but what was your age when you got your real estate license
Let's see,
initially?
35, or no, let's see. 2006. 30.
Okay, so that was what year?
2006, 7. Either late 2006 or early 2007, I believe. That's when I moved back here.
Okay, so up until basically for, let's say, 9 years, give or take, then you had no issues whatsoever.
Correct.
And in 2007, when the events for the firearm felony, were you aware that anything was stored in the house?
I knew that she had some boxes and beds and stuff in the house, yes, sir. I did not know that the guns were there, but there was a basement, a room. It wasn't a bedroom, it was just a room, a weird room. It was like a split level, and then there was one bedroom packed to the gills full of stuff.
Even though it's hard to split hairs with what is a requirement for in the possession of a firearm, the 3 firearms that you have asked about or have testified about, you stated that 2 of those weren't inoperable.
Correct.
And the 3rd firearm was an antique.
Correct.
Were any of those 3 firearms family heirlooms that came down through you to you from, let's say, a parent
No, sir.
or any other family?
No, sir.
During your college career, did you go to school in Colorado?
I did for a semester.
Okay. And then Chapel Hill, LSU.
Yes, sir.
Are there any more colleges or universities that you attended?
Yes, sir. Barton and NC State. I started at Barton and Wilson, and then went to NC State my second semester.
So, for my clarity, you started your college career at Barton.
Yes, sir.
Then you went to NC State.
Yes, sir.
Then you went to school in Colorado. Which school was that?
CU Boulder.
Okay. And then to Chapel Hill.
Correct.
And then to LSU.
Correct.
What was the total time period for that?
9 years.
Okay.
With some years off in between. In Colorado, I was out in Colorado for a few years. Just lived in the mountains. Was your college career, was it basically all geared towards the computer industry? No, sir, not at all. At first, I didn't know what, like I said, I was kind of immature. I didn't really know what I was going to college. I kind of went to college and took classes, and then when I got to LSU, a counselor called me in and said, "You've got enough hours to graduate, but nothing, you got no major. What are you majoring in?" So, and that was when I
of these incidences that you testified to was when, I think the incidence was when you knocked a beer from your
Yes.
girlfriend's hand or whatever, or your date for the evening. At that point, it was at a fraternity house. Is that
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Were you a member of that fraternity?
No, I just started college. I was 2 weeks in, maybe. It was the first month. We were checking them out. It was right at the beginning of school. Right when school started.
Basically rush.
Yes.
All right, I got no more questions.
Any other board member have any questions? Mr. Stallings, you have any follow-up to the board member questions?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Panico, do you have follow-up?
Yeah, just a few questions. So in response to the questions that Mr. Vincent asked you, about while you were on probation, the drug testing, and there were no issues with those drug tests, correct? You never,
I think you go to jail if there is.
okay. But it looks to me like, based on your testimony, that while you were on probation, for one misdemeanor conviction, you committed another one. So were you on probation and committing other, is that?
No, I never got a probation violation. I probably got off probation. Probation's usually half the time what they say or something.
Okay, so you were done with probation and then there was another
I must have been.
conviction?
Correct.
Okay, okay. I don't have any other questions.
Okay, is there any follow-up questions from the board regarding these remarks? Mr. Stallings, do you have any other witnesses?
No, Mr. Chairman, that's our case.
Have you, sir, presented all your evidence at this time, all the relevant evidence moved to?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Ms. Panico, do you have any objections to any of the evidence that you submitted?
No, we stipulated to the exhibits being entered, so it would be states exhibits 1 through 5.
Yes, I didn't know if there were any more.
No additional exhibits, no.
Do you have any witnesses?
I do not have any
You
witnesses.
do not, okay. And all of your
Yes, all my exhibits. have been
exhibits
listed.
been moved to evidence?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any objections to those?
No, Mr. Chairman. And may Mr. Sonner come back and join me over here? Is he done?
Yes, if you have no objections.
No objections, yes, sir.
He is excused.
Thank you.
So as far as I understand it, all identified exhibits have been entered into evidence, okay. Now ready for closing statements. Mr. Stallings, do you have a brief closing statement?
If it would be all right, I would like Ms. Panico to go first. I'll waive my opening of the closings.
That's
That's
fine.
fine.
That's fine. Members of the board, you've heard the evidence today. Mr. Sonner had 8 misdemeanor convictions and the 2 felony convictions, and you've heard him testify about it. You've seen his application and his explanation. So it's up to you to decide whether or not he should be registered as a trainee with this board based on his background, whether you think that he has sufficiently established the character to become a trainee with this board based on his explanation and based on those convictions in the past. And I'll leave it up to you to make that decision. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, we really appreciate the opportunity to come here. And I understand it's when we have to walk through all the things we've done in the past, especially things that, and let's first put it in perspective, it was in the 90s, and so, we're talking more than 2 decades in all of these cases. The 2007 stems directly from action he failed to take, which was certainly criminal in 1999, which was not get rid of all those guns. He was able to get rid of perhaps 27 to somewhere 47 based on the testimony, but couldn't get rid of the last 3. And you heard him say he gave it to his mother, who at the time could have used the money and could have taken them to a pawn shop, but it didn't happen, and that was his failure. And he took responsibility for it, and he got in trouble again, and he spent 3 years of his life in 2007, 8, and 9, where he pled guilty. And then he comes before you today and has explained why only a little over a decade ago, there's another thing that pops up on his conviction record. But I like to understand that today, when we make the mistakes, we're impatient with someone that we should be patient with, we say something that we wish we could take back, that we realize that we don't have to be the same person tomorrow. And at some point, we start to realize that we are changing and that we are a different person. And the interesting thing is that I keep finding is that other people are able to see it faster than we can see it in ourselves. And I feel like most people in Mr. Saunders' life, at least the last decade, have seen a man who has taken on new obligations with a family. He's got his brother who's invested in him with an orchard of all places, black truffles in North Carolina. He's got cattle out there. He's got full-time jobs, but he wants more. And that's what this growth is about, change is about, and moving on and turning the page and not letting our past define who we are today. And he has been approved by the Real Estate Commission at one point with all that you know today. The only thing that hadn't happened yet was that gun conviction. But I'd like to focus that the action was, again, still in the 90s when he made the failure, and that was the crime. And so I just hope that when you consider what you've done in the past, and we want to be treated like everyone else, that you consider when he did it, what he's shown you that he's been able to accomplish since then, that he can get this opportunity, hopefully today, to start this new path and enter a profession like you all, where that maybe some of these things he can continue to grow and learn as we all do in our profession. So thank you again for the time, and that's all we've got today.
Thank you, sir. The board will discuss this case and issue a decision as soon as possible, but no later than 120 days after the close of this hearing. That's per General Statute 150B-44. This hearing is now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will take a 10-minute recess.